Good morning. Thank you for coming. My name is Kimberly Williams. I'm an organizer with Environment America, the statewide federation of statewide citizen-funded environmental advocacy groups. We are here today to release a new report that documents how Delaware's wetlands help protect communities from flooding. I am joined today by Councilmember Harifa Shabazz of the City of Wilmington, Brian Winslow of the Delaware Nature Society, and Martha Narvaez of the University of Delaware. First, I'll make a few remarks and review the key findings of the report, and then I'll turn it over to our speakers, then we'll wrap up and take some questions at the end. Now, our message today is clear. Our wetlands are nature's first line of defense against storms and flooding. We need to protect what's left of them. Our wetlands provide habitat for local wildlife, filter out sediment and pollution, to help clean our waterways. And as today's report details, our wetlands protect our communities by acting as a giant sponge to absorb floodwater. Our report, Shelter from the Storm, shows that we still have about 40,000 acres of wetlands in flood-prone areas alone in Delaware. Our analysis shows that Delaware's wetlands are capable of absorbing 60 billion gallons of water, which is enough to cover Wilmington in over 1.5 feet of water. This analysis is crucial for two reasons. First, floods are the most common natural disaster in the United States, causing an average of $8.2 billion in damage each year for the last 30 years. Unfortunately, as global warming continues, the extreme rain events that often trigger flooding are likely to become more common. In fact, extreme rain and snow events have already become 32% more common here since 1970 alone. Second, this report is critical because right now our wetlands here in Delaware and their ability to protect us against floods are at risk. For nearly a decade, our wetlands have lacked clear protection under the Clean Water Act, thanks to a loophole in the law. That means that developers can potentially fill in and pave 20 million acres of wetlands across the country, including some here in Delaware, without limits. Now, this spring, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is moving to restore protections for all our wetlands and over half of the streams here in Delaware, which help to provide drinking water for nearly 300,000 Delawareans. Unfortunately, congressional leaders backed by developers and other polluters are waging a bitter campaign against the agency's proposed rule. That's why we call on the Delaware delegation in Congress to stand up to the polluters and back protections for all of our streams and wetlands. Now, let me turn it over to our other speakers. Dr. Shabazz.
Thank you, Kimberly. As one who had their adult life and raised their children and who are now raising their children, my grandchildren, in a neighborhood that has been hampered with flooding, I am a great advocate of the saving of our wetlands, because it is the wetland in the South Wilmington neighborhood that is going to save our neighborhood from flooding. And our community is committed to the work of preserving the wetlands and making this the area so that we now will be able to do the necessary development that this neighborhood so poorly needs. South Wilmington has the largest developable mass of land, about 35 acres. And with us doing this wetland park, it will allow us to do the economic revitalization that is so necessary to not just the Southbridge neighborhood, but to the southern part of Wilmington, which is right across from our riverfront. So I'm very much a strong advocate and support this movement to preserve our wetlands, because it's going to be what's best, not just for South Wilmington, but for the whole city of Wilmington. Thank you. Oh, one other thing. I am proud to say that right here I'm holding legislation that will allow us, that I'm bringing forth to all of council, that will allow us to acquire the necessary land so that we can make our wetland be a fruitful and vitalizing park for our South Wilmington neighborhood. Thank you.
Great. I'm Brian Winslow, Executive Director with the Delaware Nature Society, and I'm really thrilled that we're here at the DuPont Environmental Education Center, and behind me is the Russell Peterson Urban Wildlife Refuge. And it's an example of a working wetland. And when I walked in today, there's students from Oliver B. Loss Middle School here doing their wetland lesson. It reminds me of when I was an educator, and we used to teach the wetland lesson. And we had a bag, and inside the bag were items the kids had to guess, how did that item relate to a wetland? And so they'd pull out a sponge and they'd say, oh, how is a wetland like a sponge? They pull out a filter and they talk about how is it like a filter. They pull out a box of Rice Krispies and talk about how you get food from wetlands. But that lesson reminded me of what's happening here today. There are kids here seeing the real thing. They're seeing a real working wetland right here at the edge of the city where the city, river, and marsh meet. And that is so important because as we work in places like South Wilmington, and we want to demonstrate how a wetland helps improve the environment, helps improve the quality of life, and places for wildlife. We had this winter a river otter here. We routinely have muskrats and herons and osprey. We have an eagle here. And so wetlands are a great green infrastructure. And so the Delaware Nature Society for over 50 years has advocated for open space development, wetlands preservation. And we know that Delaware has so many great coastal wetlands. Without protecting those are our first line of defense. And in the Clean Water campaign, we're advocating for infrastructure to protect clean water, things like sewers, stormwater, but our best line of defense is nature's defense, which are wetlands. And we know wetlands do this job in a way that's often the most cost-effective, that actually helps improve our communities. So we're very happy to support this initiative of protecting wetlands as our first line of defense right here in Delaware. So very pleased to have you here and lead with that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Martha.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, my name is Martha Narvaez. I work for the University of Delaware Water Resources Agency, and I'm also representing the Christina Conservancy. I stand here today in this highly urbanized watershed, yet we're in this beautiful oasis with productive wetlands and waterways. The sounds of the birds as you walked across the boardwalk this morning remind you why we're here today, to protect our natural resources. As a native of Wilmington and someone who has spent many summers in Sussex County, I know the extent of wetlands in this state. Delaware is a low-lying state, and anywhere in the state is about 1 mile from wetlands. As a child, I appreciated the wetlands for their beauty, the unique animals, the opportunity to explore, and that distinct smell that told me we were at the beach. As a professional and someone who works in the field of water resources, I've come to understand the true significance and value of wetlands and the dire need to protect them. Wetlands play a critical role in Delaware's flood abatement. Delaware has 90 miles of coastline, and as I mentioned, we're low-lying and prone to flooding. We need these wetlands to ensure protection against current and future flood damage. Wetlands also play a critical role in purifying our waters. As a comparison, wetlands serve as nature's kidneys. The wetland plants remove pollutants while they also serve to trap sediments. With over 90% of Delaware's waters impaired, it's critical that these wetlands are preserved. Over the past 30 years, Delaware has lost about 5,000 acres of wetlands. This trend cannot continue. As more intense and frequent storms become the norm and pollutant runoff continues to increase, we will need wetlands protection even more into the future. It is my hope that we can provide the utmost protection to our wetlands and streams and keep Delaware's waterways clean and protected. Thank you.